Hello, the name's Bracken, 7th Bracken, and today's review is on the 1st of February.
Yes, February, the month of love. At this point, it isn't just a cliché to mock this month for its romantic overtones. It's also a cliché to mock the people who mock the people who mock the lovesick premise. Speaking as someone who has absolutely no interest in an intimate relationship, you might expect me to prattle on about how dedicating an entire month to such mushy feelings is quote-unquote stupid.
No.
Believe it or not, the idea of dedicating an entire month to feelings of affection is one that makes all the sense to me, and then some. Considering how harsh our history, our politics, and our internet community tend to be, the emotion of love is one we should celebrate more often. Heck, that's the idea this show was founded on.
As such, with the exception of only one day this year, every February on this channel will be reserved for only the good, never the bad.
Be it a review, a countdown, or even a PSA, only the stuff I love will be on display during this month. And, to inaugurate what will eventually be this show's first month-long tradition, only a franchise loved by so many could possibly be brought forth.
If you haven't figured it out from the title card, or the first line of the introduction, today I'm reviewing the first ever James Bond film, Dr.No.
Pure shop James Bond style. James Bond style.
Let's start this off with a quick review of the original cover from 1962. Right off the bat, this cover, although fine for the time it was made in, is clearly subpar now. The defining portion of this work is a green James Bond located on the mid-right who is adjacent to a lineup of 4 women, who each have their own crayon color assigned to them, yellow, blue, orange, and red. Each of these 4 women are the prominent female characters in the movie. None of them are Moneypenny, because of course they aren't. And in a somewhat clever use of artistic design, not only do the colors of the women become less green the less they have to do with 007, but they also get smaller as well. Sure, it isn't the most complex thing done in cover art, but that's why I like it. It's nice, simplistic, and accurately represents the movie it's been posted on. As for the rest of the cover, well, the fonts are pretty alright. Beyond that, everything else about this cover betrays how old it is. Everything from the composition, to the marketing text, to the unfinished, barely visible sketches of scenes from the movie, just shows that this thing originated from a time when cover art was not as advanced as it would become. As such, the only other big positive point I can give is that, if you're nostalgic for the 1960s, this cover will take you right back. Apart from that, it's just a very average, very old cover that doesn't call for all that much in terms of analysis.
As such, every time I come across another cover like this, I'll just refer back to this one.
Also, Metal Gear reference, but enough about the cover, let's get on with the movie. As per the tradition, the film opens with the iconic shot of Mr. Bond casually walking, while his movements are tracked by a gun barrel, only for him to suddenly turn and shoot his presumed assailant so hard that he starts bleeding inside his gun.
Not entirely sure how that works, but it looks cool, so I'll give it a pass.
After that, we get 3 different sets of opening credits back to back. One with a bunch of colored circles and a few cubes, set to the classic James Bond theme. One with some silhouettes of people rocking out to some Jamaican party music. And one which follows a group of 3 blind guys,
set to the Jamaican remix of 3 Blind Mice because comedic foreshadowing.
They're looking for the cat that swallowed the rat. They want to show that cat the attitude of 3 blind mice. They got the carving knife to cut the pussycat's life. The puss will get that knife for trifling with 3 blind mice.
Don't believe me? Just look. After an undercover MI6 agent gives them some change, they thank him by filling him with lead. And just in time for a convenient hearse to show up.
Hurry, man, hurry!
Better make this quick. We're an hour late for the funeral already.
Not satisfied with bumping the man off, the 3 mice have some of their friends break into the MI6 agent's house to kill off his secretary, and just after she got that covert signal to London all set up. How inconsiderate. On the plus side, they do tidy up the place by breaking some glass, removing dead bodies from the premises, and getting rid of some junk files, one of which is the title of the movie.
Meh, I'm sure those files weren't important at all.
Meanwhile, in London, shortly after MI6 realizes that the movie's plot has started, it is decided that they have no other choice but to send in the film's protagonist. Speaking of, he is currently busy in a gambling den, and doing pretty good by the look of things.
I admire your luck, Mr.
Bond. James Bond.
Played by Connery. Sean Connery.
James, where on earth have you been? I've been searching London for you.
Well, somebody is clearly a tsundere.
Moneypenny. What gives?
Me, given an ounce of encouragement. Becca! You never take me to dinner looking like this, James. You never take me to dinner, period.
Becca! Sexy bitch! Becca! 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 Becca!
I would, you know. Only Anne would have me court-martialed for illegal use of government property.
Stop lying, James. We all know that Moneypenny is the rejected childhood friend in this harem anime of a life you lead, so just admit it!
Following this, Bond goes to see his boss, M, so that they can discuss the main premise of the plot.
Jamaica went off the air tonight, just like that. Right in the middle of the opening procedure. We've checked up and Strangways has disappeared. So's his secretary.
Meh, they're probably just dealing with a mild rodent infestation. Probably nothing to worry about.
Was Strangways on something special?
Why, James, I hardly think this is the time to be inquiring about what prescriptions the man was taking.
Does toppling mean anything to you?
Damn it, M, don't encourage him!
Was throwing the gyroscopic controls of a guided missile off balance with a radial beam or something?
Wait, you guys are talking about something completely different than what I thought you were talking about, aren't you? Well, now I just feel like an idiot.
So Mr. Bond is given his assignment, is told it's dangerous to go alone, take this, and, after a quick spot of golf, Bond heads right on over to Jamaica. While waiting for a taxi, Bond is approached by a chauffeur who claims to have been sent for him by Government House. Bond, however, doesn't trust the chauffeur and calls Government House.
Car? I didn't think you wanted an official reception.
Quite right. 1 o'clock then. Forgive me if I'm a few minutes late.
Oh, James Bond's gonna choke a bitch. You may proceed.
And, after losing somebody who was tailing them, Mr. Bond does just that.
Get up.
And it is at this moment where 007 is about to interrogate his would-be assassin. Unfortunately, he makes the mistake of unwittingly allowing the man to have a cyanide cigarette. Well, with that dealt with, Bond checks into his hotel. Yeah, James, just leave that dead body for the porters to deal with. I'm sure they won't mind. And after partaking in a mixed vodka martini, Bond takes several measures to spy-proof his room.
So, James is taking notes from Light Yagami now? Does that mean he can see Shinigami?
Anyway, after spy-proofing his room, Bond goes off to question an acquaintance of Strangways, a fisherman by the name of Quarrel. The man, however, is not too interested in talking, so he goes off to get drunk.
I hate it when you leave, but I love watching you go.
In spite of this, James remains persistent and follows Quarrel down the path of booze, right into an ambush.
Ain't no use you struggling. Bush full of rascals, alligators.
That might be so, but James isn't an alligator. He's an MI6 agent.
As it turns out, wrestling alligators may be an impressive feat of strength, but it doesn't really help when subduing an MI6 field agent. And after disarming Quarrel and Pussfeller, Bond starts literally backing out of the situation until...
Hold it.
Well, that was abrupt.
Fortunately, the man who told 007 to
Hold it.
is a CIA agent who goes by the name Felix Leiter. He and Quarrel were working with Strangways on the toppling assignment, and the last few minutes were all an attempt to subdue Bond to see if he was on the level. With that settled, the group decides to make up over dinner, drinks, and exposition.
Strangways and Quarrel check the offshore islands.
Both for signs of toppling equipment, and for good places to go picnicking.
You found nothing?
Not a thing.
Alas, all the good picnicking spots had been taken!
Where did you look?
Just about most everywhere. Fire Island, Crab Key, Morgan's Reef.
Checked them all thoroughly?
All except Crab Key. We didn't have no right to go there.
Belongs to a Chinese character. He won't allow anyone to land.
Anyway, they go on about how people who do go to Crab Key uninvited tend to wind up not coming back. How Strangways and Quarrel snuck onto Crab Key at night and gathered some samples of rock and metal. And how the guy who owns the island is not shady at all. Also, there's something about a dragon I don't know. Say, what's the name of the guy who owns Crab Key anyway?
Dr.No.
Cut that out! Cut that out! He said Dr.No, not Doctor Who!
After dinner, Bond then goes to see this Shinji Mato-looking motherfucker to inquire about some of the samples Strangways found on Crab Key. But go figure, the guy who looks like Shinji Mato is about as useless as Shinji Mato.
He brought some rock samples into me for testing. Convinced they were valuable.
Were they?
No, just low-grade iron pyrites.
Can I see them?
Well, no, I threw them away.
See? Completely useless.
Seeing as this Dent character isn't going to be of any help, James decides that he's had enough for today and heads back to the hotel. Once there, Bond immediately deduces that somebody has been through his things, thanks to his prior spy-proofing. Still, he isn't going to let a little thing like somebody breaking into his hotel room get in the way of him having a good night's sleep.
Now a spider, on the other hand...
Needless to say, Bond is very put off by this. Not because tarantulas are lethal to humans, they generally aren't, but because he has crippling arachnophobia. Fun fact, Sean Connery actually was scared of the spider, so they got these shots by use of a stunt double and a sheet of glass.
Well, that was uncalled for.
Killing the spider, or the music comedically syncing up.
Yes.
In all honesty though, the music used in this sequence is nicely intense and really adds to the suspense of it all. Heck, even the comedic bit at the end is good, as it serves as a nice bit of levity to end an otherwise intense moment. Anyway, in the morning, Bond goes down to Government House to get the files on Crab Key and Dr.No. Surprise, surprise, both those files have gone missing. And gee, Miss Taro here sure did a thorough search for those files. Spent all of 10 seconds before she realized they were gone, eh? She's surprisingly fast at knowing when miscellaneous files go missing.
Coincidence? I think not!
Well, Bond's mom finally got him that new Geiger counter he asked for. Quarrel is gonna be so jealous.
Now, where exactly did Commander Strangways place those samples?
About where your feet is, sir.
Oh good, so he won't have to walk there then.
Take a look at this Geiger reading.
It's over 9,000! What, 9,000? There's no way that can be right! Cut it!
Those samples Strangways brought back from Crab Key were radioactive. Yet Professor Dent told me they were worthless chunks of iron ore.
He's either a bad professor or a poor liar.
¿Por qué no los dos?
Given that Crab Key is the most cartoonishly suspicious locale in the whole of Jamaica, Bond decides that he and Quarrel are going to sneak in there tonight. Albeit not before he finishes a side quest. Apparently, Miss Taro has decided that the best way to get rid of Miss Taro has taken to James' natural charms and wants to go out on the town with him. So she gives him directions to her house. On the way there, Bond is tailed by some stock footage of a hearse, and a car chase, that was alright for its time, ensues. only for it to be stopped not a moment later by some convenient road construction. Bond gets through because his car is small.
The significantly larger hearse, however, was apparently designed to spontaneously combust.
This automobile will self-destruct in 0 fucking seconds.
How did it happen?
I think they were on their way to a funeral.
And after nobody questions Bond about why some people clearly died in a situation involving him, he makes it to Miss Taro's place, where she was apparently expecting him? Never.
If you haven't figured it out yet, Miss Taro is very inept as she has ample chance to kill Bond, but she makes no attempt to do so. That and she's working for Dr.No.
Something which I haven't talked about at all throughout this review is that this film has subtly been characterizing Bond over the runtime. Of course, there was the obvious womanizing and drinking that you've all noticed by now, but earlier in the film, James spy-proofing his room was a nice way of showing him as a cautious and methodical character. And then there was that bit in the film when he figured out the chauffeur was a phony. The fact that he went out of his way to get the chauffeur alone to rough him up, it just goes to show how cat-like he is, toying with his opponents when he can. We see another example of that here, as Bond plans on getting Taro arrested for clearly working for the enemy, yet he does take advantage of the situation to seduce her. Needless to say, this does get him a spit in the face. But then, she was complicit in a scheme to assassinate him, so it all evens out. But the side quest isn't complete yet, as James still has to kill the follow-up assassin. And this gives us another character establishing moment for Bond, as he calmly goes about setting up the bed to make it look like he's sleeping, and then sits down to play solitaire while he waits. He doesn't have to wait long though, as the assassin shows up in, like, 30 minutes.
And we know this is a baddie because when he shows up, he does something completely monstrous.
He murders an innocent pillow!
The bastard! What inhumane monster would do such a thing?
Oh, it's the Shinji Mato look-alike. Yeah, that makes sense. Anyway, after Bond technically disarms him, Dent slyly gets his gun back. But like an idiot, he forgot that he unloaded his entire clip when he killed that pillow earlier.
So Bond just shoots him.
Well, with that side quest finished, Bond's off to Crab Key. Due to the local weather, Bond and Quarrel are forced to make land under the cover of day for night. Once there, they decide the beach is the perfect place for some pre-espionage sleep. In the morning, Bond is awoken by the most iconic image of the film.
That's right, it's only taken an hour and 2 minutes, but we're finally introduced to the main Bond girl of the film.
This is Honey Rider, a woman who regularly poaches shells from the water surrounding Crab Key and sells them for high prices.
This one is worth $50 in Miami. 50.
Unfortunately, Honey used her sail all the way up to the beach, and that'll have shown up on the enemy's radar. Either that, or they just like sending their scout boats out to shout and shoot at random bits of beachfront. That's also a valid explanation. Unfortunately, Honey's boat was shot up during that little altercation, so she has to stay on the island with James and Quarrel. On the plus side, Quarrel saw a neat crab, so that has to count for something. Anyway, Honey takes James and Quarrel to an area of the island where the enemy never goes, but then Quarrel finds something.
Look at these!
Those are dragon tracks.
Yeah, right. More like Terracotta tracks.
Oh yeah, there's been mention of a dragon throughout the film. I haven't mentioned it as, well, dragons aren't real. And even if they were, what are the odds that they'll run into—
Stay where you are, all of you!
Well, the encounter has started, so the party best roll initiative.
When it gets within range, you take the driver. I'll take the headlights and the tires. You keep safe out of sight.
10 seconds later.
I told you to stay there.
I was frightened.
Well, clearly somebody is taking cues from Cat Guy's guide to staying out of fights. What next? She'll move closer to the dragon so that she can run away sooner? Fat lot of good that'll do you when your opposition has a flamethrower.
Wait a second.
Quarrel is the closest to the dragon, and he's wearing a red shirt, and he's a black side character in a 50-plus-year-old film?
Quarrel, get out! Get out of there! No!
Well, on the plus side, at least this movie treats the death of its black character with more respect than other movies, as after James and Honey are captured, they insist on paying their respects. Unfortunately, their captors prefer it when the black guy is viewed as expendable, so they force the pair to leave without saying their goodbyes.
Has it now become a crime to cherish life?
Well, apparently it is on Crab Key.
Not only because of those guys roasting a beloved character, who I didn't talk about nearly enough, but also because their organization has contaminated the local swamp with radiation. As such, our two remaining heroes will have to be decontaminated if they are to be held prisoner. And once that's done, they're taken to the lobby, where the kind receptionists show them to their spacious accommodations and serve them a nice spot of tea and room service.
Yeah, while all this luxury is going on, I'm still thinking about Quarrel.
Not that the dynamic duo are given a chance to cry, as they are promptly drugged so that Dr.No can come into their room and do nothing. Yeah, this scene only exists so that we can see the man's prosthetic hands. Anyway, once Bond and Ryder are roused from their drug-induced sleep, they are immediately invited to dinner with their malevolent host. You know, the guy who has his guests' drinks roofied and then proceeds to creep on said guests while they're sleeping. Needless to say, this is going to be a rather awkward dinner party. Fortunately, if the silence goes on a bit too long, they can always ask the doc how much his undersea aquarium cost.
$1 million, Mr. Bond. You were wondering what it cost.
Damn, Dr.No is dead set on making this situation as awkward as possible. And yes, this is Dr.No. Yes, his hands are still prosthetic. And no, that isn't Francesco de Goy's painting of the Duke of Wellington.
Sure, the painting was stolen around the time this movie was filmed and theatrically released, but it wasn't stolen by an international criminal.
And if you're interested in the full story, follow the link in the description. Regardless, Dr.No only had Bond taken prisoner because he wanted to recruit him into Spectre.
Spectre?
Special Executive for Counterintelligence, Terrorism, Revenge, Extortion.
Yeah, that. Bond, however, decides that Spectre's acronym is stupid, and they're stupid for killing Quarrel, so he doesn't join up. As it turns out, Dr.No doesn't like being rejected, so he has Honey taken away, and has Bond beaten up and thrown in a cell. A cell with a man-sized vent leading out of it. I mean, sure, it was covered with an electrically charged grate, but he was able to bat it aside with a slipper. So yeah, it's kinda stupid. Anyway, he crawls through the vents, only to find himself back at the decontamination chamber. And what luck! In walks a convenient moron just waiting to be ganked.
Surprise!
And now that Bond is properly disguised, he can enter Crab Key's toppling room unnoticed. Hey, nice set design. Such terminals, much monitors, many TV sets turned to Cape Canaveral's moon launch. Oh my god, they have a nuclear-powered jacuzzi!
Nice.
Oh right, this movie is taking place during the Apollo 11 launch. Yeah.
You know, most sci-fi series know where they were during the Apollo 11 launch. The Bond films were born on that day.
Synchronize radio beam for toppling.
Oh yeah, Dr.No is trying to sabotage the Apollo launch. He's doing this because Spectre just likes messing with the USA and Soviet Union or something. Yeah, this actually makes more sense in the continuity of the books, as there the organization Bond often squared off with was a Soviet spy agency called SMERSH. In this case, they would have been trying to sabotage the Apollo launch because it would severely damage America's position in the space race.
In the movie, however, Spectre is doing this because, well, it's how they get their kicks. Either that or somebody paid them to do it.
Regardless of why they're doing it, James isn't going to let them get away with sabotaging a perfectly good space shuttle, or pirating cable either. So, while nobody's looking, he turns the jacuzzi on all the way. This will prevent the toppling equipment from working properly, because radioactivity interferes with said equipment. Unfortunately, he's spotted doing this, and a fight breaks out. But the jacuzzi is already running at a higher rate than the warranty will cover, so Dr.No orders everything to be... He also tries to beat the shit out of Bond, but they both fall onto this death platform. A death platform that was clearly designed for somebody to have a fight on top of it, otherwise I have no idea why this thing was designed the way it was. Bond is able to get away from the bad doctor simply by climbing out. No tries to do the same, but funny thing about prosthetic hands, they get no grip. Well, with the main villain dead, Apollo 11 flying unhindered, and the base going into meltdown, all Bond has to do now is rescue Honey and escape. He finds Miss Ryder in a room where people are drowned slowly, and after freeing her, they steal a boat and get out while the getting is good. Unfortunately, the boat they stole was low on fuel, so they wind up stranded. That is, until Leiter shows up to give them a tow, so yeah, they're going to make it back to shore just fine. Or they would if it worked for James and Honey deciding that it's totally worth the sunstroke and dehydration so long as they get to have sex in a boat.
Man, is Felix gonna be mad when he gets back to port, only to find that he has to go back out and get them again.
And yeah, that's how the movie ends.
While it isn't the best Bond film, Dr.No is still a very fun watch, and it's one of my favorite Bond films. As such, my score for it is a 5 out of 10 objectively, and an 8 out of 10 personally.
To be fair, the film does have some problems with jump cuts and dubbing, but most people won't notice unless they watch the film multiple times. Something I don't think many people will do. As for the rest of the film's editing and sound, it's okay. Sure, there are some things which would be done better today, such as the car chase bit, but it is important to remember that this is an older film, and not everything is gonna hold up as well as other aspects. As for the sound, the music in this film is fine for what it is. Goldfinger's music is better, but this movie did give us the iconic 007 theme.
So that's a definite plus.
Speaking of classic Bond, well, this film set a standard for a lot of what we expect from this series. That standard has long since been met, surpassed, and even undershot several times since Dr.No came out. And that isn't even mentioning the fact that this film doesn't have Bond using any gadgets or a Q segment. Not that this film needs any of those, it manages just fine without them. The same goes for Bond, as this film is less about establishing him as somebody who always has a surprisingly relevant tool for a job. Much rather, it establishes the man as being a confident yet cautious operator who can avoid conflict but isn't afraid of busting some chops if the situation calls for it. Speaking of, I would be remiss if I didn't mention how good Sean Connery is in this role. Now, I should mention that, at this time, I haven't seen every James Bond film, but of what I've seen, Connery is by far my favorite Bond actor. This might have something to do with him being the first actor to portray the character, but even then you can't deny that he just oozes the kind of natural charisma that you'd expect from a character like 007. As for the rest of the actors, they're good. None of them are bad, and personal standouts for me are John Kitzmiller and Joseph Wiseman, who each play Quarrel and Dr.No respectively. Although, on the subject of Dr.No, there is something I'd like to complain about. See, the good doctor is a very intimidating character and he has a great backstory. one that I skipped over to keep this review short. Yet so little of him is shown in this film that it just feels like a waste. The same goes for Honey Rider, whose backstory I also skipped over, and who, in spite of being a cool character, hardly does anything in this film. Sure, both of these characters are fondly remembered by Bond fans and casual viewers, but later villains and Bond girls do more and leave larger impressions. Which is a pity, as I feel that these characters are good enough not only to have larger roles, but also to star in their own movies each. Like seriously, if they ever start making spin-off stories for minor Bond characters, Honey and No should be among the first to get their own stories.
And if something like that already exists, could you please leave a comment down below and tell me where I can find it?
But yeah, 007 Dr.No is a fun film, and it's well worth your time to watch it.
And that's all for today. Remember to do all the liking and subscribing and stuff, and next week I'll be talking about something topical. Until then, have a good day!
I have crippling depression.